Alrighty, there we go. I think the audio should be coming through loud and clear now. Anybody in the chat, please feel free to let me know if you are hearing me just fine. I think we should be good to go ahead and get started today. So, everybody, first and foremost, thank you so much for carving the time out of your busy day. I know you, as event creators, have so many different plates you're trying to keep up in the air spinning at one given time. So, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come here and learn about Facebook and Instagram marketing and basically learn about all the marketing tools that you can be using for your events. So, just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Sam Jameson with the Eventbrite Boost customer experience team. Over the past 3 to 4 years, I've been working with event creators of all different types of events, all different sizes of events, helping them up their marketing strategy through various methods, but today's focus is going to be around Facebook and Instagram advertising. So to just give y'all a little bit of an intro, first and foremost, I'd love to know what types of events you're throwing, where you are listening in from today. I always love for these to be interactive sessions, so I'll be asking on y'all for a little bit of inspiration later down the road, but please feel free to slow me down, ask questions in the chat if you're not fully understanding anything. Ultimately, I'm here for your education today, so if you have extra questions, other things you want to cover, if we have time, more than happy to help accommodate today. So to give y'all a little bit of a brief agenda before we jump in, first and foremost, we're going to be talking about, what is Eventbrite Boost? What are the different marketing tools available to me as an Eventbrite user? Which ones are going to be the best fit for ultimately what I'm trying to accomplish? Then we're going to take a pivot into showing you some very successful campaigns of others in the events industry to kind of highlight what exactly they're doing right and show you how to emulate those same campaigns for your events. And then lastly, we'll actually be taking a dive into showing you how to create these campaigns, giving you a little bit of feedback maybe for your specific events, what might be working the best. Awesome, Chris. Thank you very much for the chat. I hope you're having yourself a fantastic day, and we appreciate you tuning in. Awesome, y'all. So just jumping into it, I feel like for so many of us, if we haven't been in this space for a very long time, or even if we have and we're trying to expand and learn new things, event marketing a lot of times seems like a really big challenge. To give you a little context of where I first started, I actually was a photographer working in a venue up in Berkeley, California. They needed somebody to help aid with the marketing, and I ultimately stepped into the role without a lot of experience. And I personally remember and can recall how overwhelming that was for me at times. So I really empathize with a lot of you if marketing has been something that you've been struggling with. Is ultimately we want to simplify it for you today and make sure it doesn't have to be as hard as it's been in the past for you. So jumping into it, I feel like a lot of reasons why event marketing seems very challenging to us is first and foremost, it's kind of difficult to know what the best marketing campaign to run at the right time is. If we hop into something like Ads Manager, we're given like 30 different options of campaigns that we could run, and we don't know which ones are going to be the most impactful for actually driving registrations for our events, building awareness, etc. And a lot of the best in class tools as well are kind of out of our price range or were built for somebody working at Coca Cola with $1 million ad budget and a 20-person ad team that ultimately don't meet the needs of what we actually need as event creators. And then ultimately, if we have, even if we dive into those tools, a lot of times we don't have enough time to take something like Facebook Blueprint, learn a lot of these marketing courses. So we're looking for something quick and easy to accomplish what we need. And then if we take that full dive into the plunge, a lot of times the functionality and reporting that we see in these campaigns that we run is really fragmented, and we kind of have a difficult time actually understanding, how are our ad dollars actually translating to effectiveness for marketing our events. And I feel like the best analogy is like a lot of times when we're working with limited budgets, it feels like we're just trying to squeeze that lemon and get as much juice out of it as we possibly can. So from our findings of what we've seen so far, event creators using the marketing features of Eventbrite Boost tend to sell around 16% more tickets on average than Eventbrite creators that are not using Boost to promote their events. So we'll go into some of the specifics of, what are some of the advantages of these marketing features, what are some unique things that Boost offers, maybe compared to another ad platform like Facebook Manager. But just wanted to give you a little bit of insight to where you can even find the marketing tab within Eventbrite. So if you go to your Manage Events section in Eventbrite, where you normally create and edit all the different events that you create, you'll find that marketing tab up in the top left-hand corner. Feel free to click to that marketing tab, and that's where you'll see a combination of marketing features. Our kind of main ethos with Eventbrite Boost was let's take the power of an automated Facebook and Instagram ad tool and let's combine it with the other marketing platforms that Eventbrite creators have been using for a very long time, such as Ad to Facebook, email campaigns, to give you a one-stop shop place for all your marketing needs for your event. So just to briefly talk about some of the various features, how they can be used, and how they're actually important to you, if there's any takeaway, y'all, I'd highly recommend, if there's one thing you take away from today that's easy to do and free, I'd highly recommend that you're using that add your event to Facebook feature. Now, the reason this feature is so important is when you publish your event over to Facebook, your fans can RSVP to your event, and what that does is that keeps them in kind of a constant stream of notifications so they don't forget about the event. I mean, try to think back. A lot of times we might have seen an ad for an event that we thought was really cool, but we didn't really interact with it at that point of time. And then, life happens and we ultimately forget about the event. So Facebook events are really important for building social proof and awareness and kind of keeping people engaged regarding your event. But it's also very accessible for people to buy tickets when you use this feature, as they can buy tickets directly within the Facebook event, not actually having to go offsite to effectively purchase here in this section. So it's really awesome that in this section they can buy directly within the Facebook event itself. And then ultimately you can take this same thing and take it to the next level from an advertising perspective by actually advertising your Facebook event. Recurring outage problems, very, very difficult. Sorry about that, Mega Spanish Party. I know we've had a couple outages this morning, so I appreciate your patience with all of us as well. Now diving over to the next feature, we have the send an email campaign function. This is another free feature for everyone in Eventbrite to use. If you're not currently using something like Constant Contact or MailChimp, it's a fantastic solution to easily email all of your upcoming attendees about the different events that you have on your schedule. It's always important to be combining email marketing with another tactic, whether that be your organic marketing or whether that be paid ads, is generally the more places and more visibility that your event has on multiple platforms, the more likely people are to be engaged or register or purchase for your event. So definitely make sure if you're not incorporating email marketing into your strategy, please start doing that, as it's very important just for general awareness. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if Facebook and Instagram or other advertising platforms end up going away, the email campaign functions are still still going to be there. Email is not effectively going away. But today's main focus, everybody, that we want to talk about is advertising on Facebook and Instagram and how to use this to promote your upcoming events. So let's go ahead and take a deep dive into showing you a successful campaign first, kind of highlighting, what are some of the factors that they did right, and then we'll go into the campaign creation process, and I'll ask for a little bit of help from y'all later just for some inspiration on, what types of events you are throwing. So first and foremost, the main pillars of a successful campaign are what's the timing and the schedule. So when out of anywhere are we choosing to actually run this ad? The second would be who are we choosing to target with that ad? The third would be what type of objective are we running, and does that match up with our schedule and budget? And then the fourth would be what's the ad creative that we ended up using. So I really like this campaign here, ran by one of our customers using the platform Cream Events out in New Zealand. This was a campaign that they were running for one of their upcoming festivals. And I think they really did a lot of good things right here in this campaign. It was a good campaign that not only built awareness, social proof, and remarketing audiences, but they also ended up selling a good amount of sales with this campaign here. So first and foremost, you'll notice that within the Boost interface, we really try to simplify many of the different elements that you're seeing in this section. So normally when you pop into something like Ads Manager, you're seeing a lot of metrics that look good on paper, but they don't actually tell you any insight of maybe how you're selling tickets, how people are registering, how you're actually building a remarketing audience to target down the road. So we really try to make these core metrics for you front and center, so it's very easy to understand your effectiveness. So this creator here ended up spending around 275 bucks on the campaign and made around 5.6K back worth in sales. Now, one really cool thing to kind of note about this campaign was they were running one of those RSVP ads. So what they did was they used Jennifer, thank you so much for your comment. Fantastic to have you in here today, and please feel free to drop questions as we go along too if there's anything that's a little bit unclear. So what I really liked about this campaign was they were running a campaign that the main objective was actually getting people to RSVP to their Facebook event. And the reason this campaign was so effective is, not only did they actually sell a decent amount of tickets with this campaign, as people were buying through that Facebook event, but additionally, they grew a really big retargeting audience of people that they could market to later down the road when there's more urgency to purchase for their events. So you can see here that they actually got around 1,300 people engaging with their event in their ad. They got around 540 RSVPs to their event, and these are all individuals that we can target later on down the road as we actually get a little bit closer to the event, when people generally have a little bit more purchase intent. Just scrolling down, we also allow you to really easily test different target audiences or incorporate audiences of people that are more likely to purchase. Normally, a lot of times, unless we're kind of ads manager experts, we're generally maybe running a campaign just targeting people that are maybe interested in things related to our events. And it's a great form of targeting. We use it for almost everything, but we're not actually maybe remarketing to people that have interacted with us on social media, people that have purchased from us in the past, which your past purchasers normally are the individuals that are most likely to actually purchase for your upcoming events. So we make it really easy to test out different audiences without you having to put a lot of work into it as well. And then scrolling down to the ad creative section, we'd only used one ad creative here in this section, but we make it easy for you to test different ad creatives if you have one image, one video. But if there's any takeaway I could give you here, we generally would probably want to prioritize video content. If you have it, I know it's not accessible to everybody and it can be a little bit of a chore to get. But the reason video is so strong is it really helps people, it kind of sparks their imagination of what would it actually be like for me to attend this event. Maybe if you had a montage or some footage of what it was like at your other previous events. But I like to hear how when they did use image content, they used a nice branded image. They didn't use kind of some stock type image here that gave a good amount of context on their event. So awesome, y'all. Let's go ahead and actually jump into showing how to create some campaigns. For everybody in the chat right now, please feel free to let me know what types of events that you're throwing. This is the section that I could use a little bit of inspiration to maybe help guide you and what should I target? How should I run my campaigns? What would my type of schedule be essentially? So when you first hop into the platform to build an ad campaign, you're going to notice this orange graph down towards the bottom of this orange line. Now, half the battle to running a good ad campaign is simply just trying to run the right type of campaign at the right time, and we've actually tried to automate this decision-making process for you. So all you effectively need to do here is select the event that you would like to advertise, and based on how your customers on average purchase for your events, this graph is basically helping you understand when do my customers normally purchase for my event. Paint and sip parties, that sounds like a lot of fun, Jen. Thank you very much for your comment. So generally, for events, we see a pretty similar buying cycle for a lot of different types of events, but depending on the type of event that you're throwing, your customers might actually be purchasing at different points in time compared to somebody else throwing different types of other events. So what we tried to do here was let's kind of make a graph that helps you understand during what periods your customers are normally purchasing or registering for your event. And based on that data of when your customers are likely to buy, let our system recommend what campaign we think you should run. So in this case, I'm getting pretty close to my actual event here. So it's recommending I run a campaign that might go straight to eventbrite.com for people to purchase tickets. So all you'll have to do is choose your event and then hit the blue button to get started building your ad. So we will give you a recommended objective and give you a little context on why you should run this, but I also want to help you walk away from here today with some context of why we recommend what we recommend. So you can always customize your objective, and I want to kind of talk about some of the reasons why. Oh, we got Tiago. Hi, I host an online panel discussion. Thank you so much for your comment, and thank you for being here today as well. So we always will have a recommended objective, but if you want to customize this, I want to give you some context of why we recommend certain campaigns during certain time periods compared to others. So this option here that says get people to buy tickets on your website, this is one of the most commonly run campaigns in the event space. If you've ever done much on Facebook before and heard of something called like a link click or a conversion ad, it's normally just a fancy way of saying we're running an ad that goes straight to your ticketing pages or your website. These ads are best to run when you're in a period where your customers actually have urgency to purchase. If we try to take a step back and maybe empathize with your customers and when they might be buying, it's always important to put yourself in your buyer's shoes and ask yourself the honest question, if I was the person buying tickets, would I buy now or would I be waiting a couple months down the road? Or is there going to be a point later on where there's a lot greater urgency for me to commit to making that purchase? So for example, if I'm throwing an outdoor beer festival 8 months away and people don't even know what the weather's going to be like, I'm not worried it's going to sell out. I might not click on your ad, maybe go to eventbrite.com to check out your actual event. So these are the best ads to run when you have urgency for your customers to purchase. But if there isn't as much urgency, but we still think people might purchase, we might want to run something like a Facebook RSVP campaign. As we had saw in that example earlier, where that creator was running an event response campaign, they got a lot of new individuals in their remarketing audiences, people RSVPing for their event, but they also sold a lot of tickets because people can easily buy in the Facebook event. So if you're ever looking for a little bit of a happy medium between a campaign that's really oriented for sales, but one that also makes it easy for people to build awareness, purchase tickets if they really want to, I might recommend something like an RSVP campaign. The only downside of these campaigns is they don't advertise on Instagram. But if your primary demographic is on Facebook anyways, that isn't necessarily a problem, and this is one of the campaign types that creators really like to run. And we also have campaigns just for general engagement, post engagement, page likes, etc. But in all reality, you're probably better off running something like an RSVP ad that actually fosters engagement that you can really use to actually sell tickets for your events. As generally, when you target people that are likely to engage with the page or post, they might be people that are really likely to interact with something, but they don't actually go outside to go to live events or things like that. So you'd probably be better off running one of these two objectives, but you can always roll with the recommended. But just wanted to give you a little context of why we recommend what we recommend. This is my first event I have ever used Eventbrite for. Feel free to tug and look and offer any advice and tips. Not getting much traffic for it. Awesome. Thank you for your comment, Jen. We'll get to that a little bit later down the road, maybe when we get to the targeting section and talk about things like that. So the first step, or the next step after we choose our objective, is choosing, what do we want to pay for the campaign with, and then what page do we want the ad to run from. So just as a reminder, the way Facebook ads work is you pay for your ads via something called a Facebook ad account. You can almost think of that as like a credit card. You're kind of hooking like your payment method up to this ad account, and that's how you pay and finance the campaigns you run. If it was a utopia, we could run all of these ads for free, but Facebook still needs to get paid at the end of the day. So we'll just choose the ad account we want to pay for our campaign with. And then after that, we'll choose the Facebook page and then Instagram page that we would like our ad to run from here. And then if you know much about Facebook pixels, if you're an advanced advertiser that uses multiple, you can choose which one we would like installed on the Eventbrite ticketing pages. If you don't know much about Facebook pixels, y'all, the most simple answer of what these are is this is how remarketing and tracking normally works. So we'll actually automatically install this for you. So if you don't know much about it, don't even worry. You don't have to do anything at all. But basically the way it works is if that little piece of code is on your Eventbrite site, if somebody either clicks on your ad or views your ad and then buys within a couple days, that purchase can be tracked back to your ad campaign. And you can also remarket to people that visit those pages. There has been some recent security and privacy changes to this type of tracking. If you heard much about Apple's iOS 14 updates, a lot of people are opting out of this type of tracking, but it still is amazing to have as it'll help you track results from your campaign and help you have an audience of people that actually are interested in attending your event that you can easily remarket to. So if you don't know much about pixels, don't sweat it as we handle all the hard stuff for you, and there shouldn't really be anything that you have to do. Now in the next step, we're simply entering what's the location targeting that we would like to do for our campaign. So here we can just go ahead and type out the location that we would want to effectively hit. And we try to build this system out that the more campaigns you build, the easier it's going to be. If you're normally throwing events in the same area, you're throwing very similar types of events, what you can do is after you build a campaign or two, you can normally duplicate campaigns. So you could almost think about it as Mad Libs that we're maybe filling in a couple blanks instead of reinventing the wheel every time we go to build something new. So I'm going to choose Los Angeles right here. And we normally automatically pull in the location of your Eventbrite event as well. My event was based in the entire US, so if the box is ever left blank, it just targets the US by default. And down towards the bottom, this is where we can choose a lower bound for the people we're choosing to target in terms of the age range. In all reality, y'all, you don't need to get crazy granular and let's say, only target people like 18 to 32 or something like that. Normally, it's better to leave a lower bound for the age range and then let Facebook do that optimization. I found that out the hard way after around $100,000 worth of ad spend of A/B testing that in a lot of cases we're probably not going to be able to beat Facebook. It's best with its optimization, so just make your life a little bit easier and let them handle the hard stuff for you. Now getting over to the targeting section, y'all, this personally was the one that was kind of the most difficult for me when I was learning it. So I want to spend a good amount of time today making sure that all of you understand it. And if there's anybody else here as well, I know Tiago and Jennifer dropped the types of events that they are throwing. Anybody else that's listening, please feel free to let me know what types of events you are throwing as well. So the first thing that we are going to configure here is an audience that's going to help us go after new people and get new people interested in our event. If you've ever ran a campaign on Facebook before, this is basically probably what you've already worked with. It's called interest, demographic, or behavior targeting. So this is what we can use to effectively target people that are interested in things related to our event. So Jen had put her example in the chat earlier if she hosts paint and sip parties. So what we could do in this section is we could just try typing out something generally related to the event. So, painting might be a good place to start here in this section. We could put in painting. And then after we end up doing that, we can always use this drop down to get other recommendations on things that are relatively similar. Now, these are always going to get better the more interest that you have in here. So it'll be able to recommend higher quality ones, but it's always important to maybe just start off and type out something broad here within this box. I know all of you are probably going to know the things that your customers are interested in a little bit better than I am, but I want to give you a general framework of how you can build this audience. So generally, if I was advertising even something like yoga, I might type in yoga a couple times just to even see what I can target. You unfortunately can't target everything under the sun in terms of Facebook interest, and there's some weird stuff that you might not think that you can target that you can target. So it's always important to just kind of fish around at first to look through here and see what's actually relevant for what we have going on. So, if we were advertising like painting parties and things like that, we might even want to try typing out something like art and see what general art related interests are in here that might potentially make sense. So just kind of looking through, we've got a lot of different arts here in this section, but maybe even something like kind of a general art targeting individuals. If your events too are really like group friendly event, or you do a lot of things like birthdays and things like that, you can actually use the demographic targeting to target people with upcoming birthdays. I've worked with a couple paint party individuals before that really try to market some of their events as really birthday friendly. So, if we wanted to target people with the birthdays in the month of November, we could enter that in as a behavior target. Or if you are throwing really family friendly events that the whole family could attend, a really good type of demographic target to actually use is to target parents. Or you can also get a little bit more narrow than that if generally it's like a family event that really caters to younger children too as well. All right, we got one from Tim. We host bonsai bar events, like a sip and paint, but we make bonsai trees at bars. That sounds like an awesome event. I feel like we need a little bit more of that in the world. Let us know if you are doing that out in LA, as I would love to come to something like that. Awesome. So in your case, Tim, that might be something where we type out, something like bonsai and just effectively see what we can target. So we could target people interested in bonsai, Japanese bonsai garden, things like that. So generally, at least you'll find a couple interests related to your event, and then you can enter in more things. There isn't a right number to effectively have here. I'd say what's a little bit even more important is just making sure you have a decently sized audience. So if we are in the LA area and what we chose to enter in terms of our interests or demographics, let's say we only had like 5,000 people, we know that's probably way too small of an audience. So we probably at least want to get that up above 100,000. I know it's going to depend on where you are, where your events are, what you are advertising, but generally you would want to probably try to prioritize quality over quantity of interest. So, if there were only 3 things in this section that we thought made sense to us, it would be perfectly fine to run a campaign with that. But in most cases, I generally try to put around maybe 5 to 10 interests here in this section. I often will do things like Hobby Lobby or Craft Michaels because the people that shop there are also my target audience. Awesome. So stuff like that, you might be able to even type out. Let's see if we can target Hobby Lobby. Boom. So you can target people interested in Hobby Lobby. I think Michael's actually might be able, yeah, Michael's stores. So you could target people interested in Michael's stores. So great addition, Jennifer. You can always think of things that your customers or even other businesses that they might be potentially interested in. Is it best to use super broad interests because then I see once I enter my budget will limit it to a lot less reach. So generally, I would probably say if it's something maybe as broad as art, that could potentially be a little bit broad, but there's kind of 2 schools of thought on it. So, sometimes if you're going a little bit broader, Facebook always optimizes it over time to kind of narrow in and target groups that are more likely to actually engage for your objective. So, I've seen people for other campaigns. I've done this in all different types of campaigns. I've worked with people in the music industry that would put like 50, 60 different interests in there of related artists of things that weren't, even that relevant, and then it optimizes it down anyways. But if there are a couple interests in particular that do effectively well, it's always good to maybe, just prioritize quality over quantity. So if you could only think of 3 to 4 that are really, really spot on for your target demographic, That's okay. But I'll also show you kind of once we move past this step, if any of you want to dive a little bit deeper and do a little bit of A/B testing as well, how we have an advanced version of this targeting interface, just if you wanted to see if, targeting people interested in art might perform better than targeting people interested in like Michaels or Hobby Lobby or other interests like that. So, does anybody have any questions just before we jump to kind of the next audience section right here? This is kind of our interest, behavior, demographic audience. Normally, we're just typing out a couple more broad things related to our event to kind of fish, see what we could target initially. Use your own context, as you're going to know it a lot better than probably anybody else on the planet of what things we think might be relevant, what our customers are interested in, and then maybe try to have around 5 to 10 interests here in this section. But if you can't think of things, the ones that you have in there are already quality and it's a pretty big sized audience, you'll probably find a roll with what you have. Now, the other important part of when we're building ad campaigns with Facebook and Instagram marketing, thanks so much, Jennifer, I appreciate that. The other part that a lot of us don't do when we build campaigns in Facebook initially, just because it's a little bit difficult to do, is actually incorporating remarketing audiences into our campaign. So, interest audiences are great, but they normally help us go after people that are unfamiliar with our business. So, it's great of getting new people interested in, but generally we also want to have something that's re-engaging people that might have interacted with our socials, might have visited our Facebook events or RSVP'd, people that visit our website, and then also people that have bought from us in the past on Eventbrite, which we know from the data that we've seen are some of the people that are most likely and most prone to always purchase for your upcoming events. Unless you're throwing like an intro event and then after the intro everybody goes to something else effectively. But for the vast majority of all event promoters, repeat purchasers are always a very important part of your marketing strategy. And normally if you're working in something like Ads Manager, the analogy I could kind of give, it's like a meal prep service like HelloFresh. When you're working with Ads Manager, it's like you have to go to the grocery store, buy and build all your ingredients, and then you get into the kitchen and then have to cook it and make everything. What we try to do is allow you to build the audience in the same place where you're building the campaign. So we're actually automatically including an audience of people that interact with you on Facebook and Instagram. So that's another reason why it's really important to do the Facebook events, is these campaigns will automatically help you remarket to people that interact with the Facebook event that you create for your event. And then also, if you have an Instagram account you want to include, you can include your Instagram for remarketing. And then that Facebook pixel we were talking about earlier that just helps you remarket to people that visit your Eventbrite ticketing pages, you can also select that as well. Do you feel it's best to use ads instead of relying on shares from followers or likes on Facebook? When looking at insights, you see your reach was very limited about just posting with your events. So, Jennifer, unfortunately, kind of the situation of how it unfolded, and this has really been the case for even platforms like Facebook or Instagram, probably over the last maybe 6 to 8 years now, is they really kind of shifted their model to almost limiting your organic reach. Even on things like Instagram nowadays, if you generally like organically post to your Instagram, you're really only reaching around 10% of your total following. If people end up interacting or engaging with that post and kind of they see it's good quality content, they'll generally expose it to more of your following. But in a lot of cases, kind of the new algorithms, it's not as nice or it doesn't play as nicely with organic promotion. So that's why paid promotion is always really important, especially at the very least, just so we can have paid promotion that's remarketing to the people that are probably our most engaged customers or people that are most likely to purchase as they already expressed interest. And when we post organically, if they're not following us, unfortunately, we might not be able to reach them or target them with our ads. So even if we just kind of work with the simple targeting flow we have one audience going after new people, another audience helping us go after our remarketing audience as well. But if you always want to configure this in more depth, there is a switch to advanced targeting button. And I just want to talk about maybe a couple other cool things just for inspiration. You don't have to do this, but I feel like it's important to know, and I wish somebody would have told me this a little while back. So the only downside to this audience mix that we have right here, we have this one audience that was going after kind of our interests, demographics we had here, and then we had another audience that was handling all of our remarketing, so page engagers, Instagram, past buyers. Right now, we're almost putting all of our eggs in one basket for going after new people. So if this interest audience targeting people interested in painting and other various interests, if it does well, that's fantastic. But if it doesn't do that well, we don't have another audience helping us go after new people that would be good for us to target. So I just want to give you a little inspiration on what you could do to maybe add in another audience to have a little bit of A/B testing. If you've heard of the term lookalike before on Facebook or you haven't, basically think of a lookalike audience as almost Facebook is building an audience for you to help you go after new people based on a little bit of data that you can give it. So it accomplishes the same purpose as the interest audience, where it helps you go after new people, but you could almost think about it that instead of entering in the interest yourself and then figuring out the audience, Facebook analyzes the data of people that are interacting and then spits you back a new audience of people that are very similar. And by far, from hundreds of thousands of campaigns worth of data that we've seen, one of the best ones that you can actually use is what's called building a lookalike off your past buyers. So we have a lot of audiences that we can build audiences directly off of data from your Eventbrite events. So with this option here, the lookalike of past attendees, basically what's going on is we're taking the data of people that have bought from your events on the past in Eventbrite, giving that data to Facebook, and it's building you an audience to help you target people that are similar. And honestly, like, what better kind of data source to use to help us go after new people than the people that have already purchased us in the past? So that's just one example that you could use. And if you don't happen to have that data, or you're kind of a new creator that's getting started, we also do have something called Smart Audiences. And there's an easy way to include these in the simple interface, so you actually don't even need to jump into this section. But think of these as Eventbrite's version of lookalike audiences that allow you to target people that have purchased for other similar Eventbrite events. So it's a really cool feature that, if you don't have a lot of data on people that have bought from you in the past, you can actually tap into Eventbrite's network to help you market to people that have purchased for other similar events, which is a really, really cool feature. And that's pretty much it in terms of the target audience. Moving on to the next step, we will give schedule recommendations and budgets if you don't want to put a lot of thought into it and you just want to have a decent amount of marketing during the right time period. But if you want to customize your budget as well, you're always more than welcome to do this here. So you can enter a start date for your campaign, go ahead and enter an end date, and then you can go ahead and enter the budget. Total budget, daily budget, it really doesn't matter which one you end up choosing. It doesn't really make a performance difference. I would personally say roll with total budget if you just have a fixed budget for the entire advertising campaign that you're throwing. But if you're somebody that likes to kind of change it or fluctuate it on the day to day, it could be a little bit easier to do something like a daily spend here. Awesome. So the last step of building your campaign, and thanks for listening, everybody. We're pretty much almost at the end here of the process of building ads. So I know it seems a lot like a lot when we're talking about the context, but it's actually not a crazy amount of steps. So normally in the first step, we're automatically recommending an objective for you. So you probably don't even have to think of anything there. All you might be doing when you build new campaigns is just switching up the event that you are advertising. In probably 99% of all cases, unless you work with a lot of other different promoters or things like that, you're running it from the same account, so you don't need to change it. Normally, you're probably targeting the same locations as well, so you really don't need to change these. And then your target audiences, ultimately, you might find a mix that works for you for most of your events. If you're not throwing a ton of different types of events, you can probably find an audience mix that actually is going to really work for all the different events that you're throwing, so you might not really have to change much in this section. And then all you're focusing on doing is really setting a schedule and budget for that ad and designing the ad. So we really tried to build this in a way that once you build an ad or two, it's going to be a lot easier for you to build ads for your upcoming events. So y'all, when it comes to the ad creative section, by far the most important element of what we have going on here is that image or video that we end up using. I mean, if we think about it ourselves when we look at content or things like that, it really is the visual, that image or video that captures our attention first and foremost, that is the most important element of actually, giving context about our event and actually just showcasing what we have going on. So I'd highly recommend y'all, if you happen to have video content, please try to prioritize using the video content, as it's just going to give people a lot more insight and help spark their imagination on what might it be like, or what would the experience that I would have be like if I were to attend this event. And we've probably seen this ourselves, when we see a really good video for an ad that we're looking at or an event that's upcoming that gives us a lot of context, it generally we're a little bit more open into just discovering what that experience would be like. If you don't have videos to work with, I would recommend you might want to use some branded images. I sometimes find images that, maybe have your logo on there or a little bit of branding tend to perform a little bit better than just stock images or anything like this. So this would be an example of a branded kind of image that we have here. Facebook used to be super they kind of got mad when you used images with text in the past. They've actually kind of foregone that policy, so you're more than welcome to use ads now that have more than 20% text in them, where they didn't really let that fly back in the day. So I'd say focus on the image and video first. If you have another image or video that you want to A/B test, you can always add in more than one image or video here. So let's go ahead and add in another image. So you can always A/B test different components. And basically the way it works is we'll spin up two different versions of your ad. Whichever one ends up performing better, that's the one that will be showcased more by your advertisement. So I added in this other video, so we have another variation here. And you can add variations for any of the other components, but I would highly recommend y'all probably just stick to A/B testing an image or video. In reality, testing out all these other variations, it's probably going to hurt you more than it helps. And the reason being is the way that budgets work on Facebook is when you spend money, your ad reaches people. The more people your ad reaches, the better Facebook is able to identify what's working, what's not working, how can we focus on what's actually working. And one of the big mistakes that I made when I first started was I thought, oh, if we do a lot of A/B testing, add in a bunch of variations, there's going to be less creative fatigue. Like people are not seeing the same ads, so they might get tired of me a little bit slower in this section. But what I found was because I had made so many variations, they weren't actually reaching enough people, and it was hard for Facebook to figure out what was working. So please don't repeat my same mistake, y'all. You don't need to go overboard with it, but I'd say if you're going to do anything, you could maybe test out a couple different images in this section. After the images, we have the post text. Or one last note on the image as well. If you happen to have an image that is nicely formatted for something like Instagram stories. So these ads by default run on Facebook, Instagram streams, and then Instagram stories as well. But y'all know that stories have that kind of vertical placement. If we click on the pen icon underneath one of the images that we had in, this will allow us to change up that crop, the image, or if we're working with a video, the thumbnail or the video on a per placement basis. So if I wanted to change up the image that I was using here to something that was nicely branded for stories, I can simply just replace it, and then we'll have kind of that more square image running on the stream network placements, and then something that looks really nice on stories. We got a question. Would a video montage of several photos of different events be beneficial? Honestly, Jennifer, I think that would be a pretty good idea. Oh, my name is Sam, by the way. Thank you for asking. I would honestly suggest. I have seen it in certain cases. I've done that for some of my own ads when I don't really have like video content to work with. There are a lot of free programs that you could use. I've used a platform called InVideo in the past that you can use to make free video content. And some of these platforms have like a watermark on there by default, but they give you an option to like share it or like tell a friend about it and then it removes the watermark. So that's one that I've used in the past. But I do think even like a video montage of, different pictures from your events, that's probably going to give somebody a lot more context than just maybe like a still image like this. So I'd highly encourage, as long as it doesn't take way too much of your time, as I know your time is very valuable, it might be cool to maybe put together a little bit of a video montage of, photos from past events. Is I feel like that, if you don't have dedicated video content to work with, probably might be the next best thing for you to work with. And we will pull in to kind of like automatically make a little bit of a copy for you here in this section. So we'll pull in like the name of your event, the date of your event, the location of your event, but it is a little bit more of a robotic type copy. And if you think about it, if everybody that uses this platform just rolls with the default copy, and there are a lot of other advertisers in your area that might be using this platform, people on Facebook or Instagram might kind of catch on. They're like, hey, I'm seeing this same language being used in a lot of different ads. So I'd highly recommend. I know all of us in the event space, we're fun, we're interesting, or creative people. So bring your own flavor, bring your own language into this. Everybody has their own brand, their own language that really resonates with their customers better than others. So I'd highly encourage you, feel free to delete what we automatically generate in the post text and write something fun and engaging. You can always add in emojis as well. We have a little button here that you can click to go ahead and add in emojis to your campaign. May seem a little bit silly, but emojis are really nice as kind of a visually attention grabbing element, or visual attention grabbing element, as it's just something kind of different within the newsfeed that people can end up grabbing and entering for their ads. So after that, we have the link headline. So this generally shows up below the image or video we're using. Generally, a lot of times people just put the name of their event here in this section, or maybe include a little bit more information, one of the lesser important parts of your ad, and then the link description. This doesn't show up in every ad placement nowadays, but it generally would show up below the headline that we're effectively using here. And it just tends to describe like, why would I click on the ad? Or what am I getting myself into if I click on the ad? So in this case, we have, we're using that buy tickets button. So something like get your tickets on Eventbrite makes perfect sense. I would, in a lot of places, put something like, click here to get your tickets. Generally, don't pay too much attention to this one as it's very minor and doesn't show up all the time. And the last component of the ad is that call to action. So this is the button that shows up towards the bottom of your ad. Normally, I'd recommend y'all, if you are selling paid tickets, please try to use the buy tickets one. It's not natively available on Facebook for every type of campaign that you're running, but it generally, when we're advertising events, is by far the best one that we could effectively use here in this section. But if you are maybe advertising something like a free event and maybe don't want to confuse people of thinking your event is actually a paid event, you could do something like sign up. That's another really good call to action to use, or potentially something like learn more. But in most cases, I'd recommend try to use that buy tickets button, as it's by far the most effective one. So y'all, just to kind of recap, the most important things in the creative section is maybe try to A/B test, one image, one video, or a couple images. So we're not kind of putting all our eggs in one basket, but you probably don't really need to add in variations for the other components. Always try to prioritize video if you don't have it. If you don't have video, you could always do something like what Jennifer was talking about, maybe putting together a photo montage of some different things that you have. For your post text, you generally just want to tell people the who, what, when, where, and why. And if there's any sort of urgency that would cause somebody to purchase today compared to buying tomorrow, we'd want to make sure we address that in our ad. So let's say, for example, our ticket prices are going to be going up at a point in the near future, or our event is really close to selling out. Unless we explicitly say that in the copy of our ad, we really can't expect our customers or our fans to just know that off the top of their head. Or they might have to go to the Eventbrite site and then see, oh, we're really close to selling out, or find more information there. So we always want to use language or indicate anything that might foster a sense of urgency for somebody to purchase at this point in time compared to purchasing a little bit later down the road. And y'all, that is actually the last step of creating your campaign. If you ever don't want to launch that campaign, you could always save that as a draft there. So I'll just save this as a draft for my campaign. But I just want to quickly show you, once we built a campaign or created a draft, it's really easy for us to actually duplicate anything that we make. So if you're throwing the same types of events, maybe all you're doing now is just choosing a different event that you're advertising. Maybe the next couple steps are the exact same, you're not changing. Maybe the audiences as well. Maybe you found a strategy that works really well for you. And one thing to note about the audiences as well is we do have our own version of budget optimization that was built for events. So if we maybe added in like another audience here, like kind of as Jennifer was talking about earlier, like she targets people interested in Hobby Lobby or Michaels, but maybe we wanted to see if that performed better than targeting people interested in painting. We could always set up two different audiences where they target different groups, so things like that. And what our system does is it'll move budget from the poor performing audiences to the better performing audiences around every 6 hours. So you can kind of think about it as like a stock portfolio manager for you that would move budget from one stock to another depending on when a sector is doing hot. It's kind of what we do on the back end. So I'd always encourage you, like, feel free to try out new things. As we ultimately don't know when it comes to targeting of what works and what doesn't until we effectively try, but we try to lower the stakes that, if you don't get it right with one type of target audience, we'll move budget away from it so your budget ultimately isn't wasted at the end of the day. And then, we might be setting a new schedule or budget for the ad that we're working with. And then simply the last step is we're just designing the ad. So mainly, if you find a rinse and repeatable process for you, the main thing that you're pretty much doing is just really entering in a schedule and budget, and most of the other steps are going to be pretty simple from your campaign. So, when I first started building ads, generally took me around maybe 10 minutes to build an ad campaign, but I've ultimately got it down with like a duplicate process, or try to get it for a lot of customers that I work with, try to get it down to maybe like a 2-3 minute process that you have a good successful ad campaign for your events. So, y'all, that was pretty much everything that I wanted to cover today. Just wanted to take a brief second to kind of pause, let y'all get some water. Let me get a little water, as I've been talking for a lot long straight. Please let me know if you have any other questions, or maybe anything else that we could address before we hop out today. And I really appreciate all of your questions so far and all of your engagement. It means a lot. Awesome. So how can you see the impact of your audience and reach? Is this something I can adjust daily? I have 7 or 6 days remaining before the event. So let's really quickly, Jennifer, to answer your question, let's hop over to like a example campaign that we had here that actually has some data on it to kind of show you, what this ends up looking like for a campaign. So we could pop into one of the campaigns that we were looking at for Cream events a little bit earlier. Maybe let's jump into this one right here. 6 days before your event, if you would probably want to run any type of ad, you'd probably want to run an ad going straight to your ticketing pages. Tiago, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and you were one of the early ones in here, so I appreciate you hanging on for the full time, and I hope you have yourself a fantastic rest of your day as well. I really appreciate it. So Jennifer, getting back to your question, how can you see the impact of your audience in your reach? So whenever you're running a campaign, we'll try to kind of summarize some of those, more major elements. So we'll show you reach really explicitly up towards the top, like how many people have you reached, based on people that either like, comment, or kind of interact with your ad, or maybe click on it to go to eventbrite.com. We'll try to show you the people in the remarketing audience you're acquiring, but normally we're also including a remarketing audience, so your campaign's kind of automatically remarketing to those individuals. So Jen, do we have other classes or tutorials on types of this that build your content and business? So if you actually hop into YouTube, there should be like an Eventbrite Boost kind of YouTube series channel where I have a lot of other videos. I'd say if there's anyone that might be kind of important for you to look at, there's a pretty long video that kind of breaks down how to audit your campaigns. Just kind of goes over like all these same variables, but in a lot more depth and kind of showing examples and stuff like that. But we have a lot of other ones. You can always reach out to us via the help button in the platform too if you have additional questions, or if you need to flag me down or something like that. Just say like, hey, I'd like to talk to Sam or anything like that. But we do have a lot of other content, and we also have a help center as well. Let me link this for you really quickly in the chat, with a lot of other links to documentation and guides and things like this. And I also do these live streams every Thursday at the same time. So if you ever, a little bit later think of a question later on down the road, or you want to touch on something, please feel free to jump in on other sessions. We kind of talk about a lot of the same stuff, but right now I'm trying to basically start up a new kind of webinar schedule to maybe go more in depth on certain topics and other things like that as well. But kind of getting back to your questions, one thing, Jennifer, you want to kind of be a little bit careful about when you are running ads is you a lot of times might not want to make like rapid adjustments to like your targeting or things like that if your campaign's been running for a little bit of time. As the way it works on Facebook is if we make updates to either the ad creative or our targeting, what it causes is it causes our campaign to go through reapproval on Facebook. Yeah, so Facebook's basically trying to police not have bad content on their platform and things like that. So we could assume if there were bad actors, if Facebook left a system where if somebody launches an ad initially, it gets approved and then they change it to something malicious and they don't have to go through the reapproval process, that's where you can end up with bad stuff on Facebook. So whenever you make a change to your audiences or your creative, it goes through that reapproval process with Facebook and sometimes can take little bit more time to effectively optimize again. So I encourage a lot of people sometimes if you need to make changes for your campaign, you could always pause the initial one you have running, maybe duplicate it and launch a new campaign. That way you almost have like a fail safe. So if you realize like, oh shoot, the new campaign with the new changes I made actually isn't performing as well as my older one, you could pause the new one, and since you didn't touch the old one initially, you just paused it, you could always unpause the old ad campaign. So just wanted to mention that is, sometimes it's more effective to make your changes near the start of the campaign compared to like running it for a couple weeks and then you make a big change and you reset a little bit of that optimization. And then scrolling down a little bit further, this is where you can get more details on like the target audiences as well. So kind of like the specifics of like reach, interactions, purchases, if they occur as well here in this section. And just one thing I want to kind of mention to y'all about is, I don't know if many of you were big advertisers prior towards around, February, November of this year. We definitely didn't have events to advertise in the last year, but if many of you were doing those way back, so Frank, feel free to get in touch with us via the help button as well. I always, if I'm not even able to do like one-on-one calls, if you do run some types of campaigns, I can always make a quick little video for you giving you feedback or anything like that, or we can kind of see what's going on. But I appreciate you asking that question. If you end up like just kind of hopping in the Boost platform, feel free to reach out to us via that help button. It normally is the easiest way to contact, and we have a lot of people on our team too that can help advise you with campaigns and things like that, even if we aren't just explicitly able to like hop on a one-on-one call with you as well. Awesome. And where was I? I was talking about oh, I was talking about recent Facebook changes to tracking. So the way it used to work was that Facebook Pixel, which just as a reminder, y'all, was that tiny little piece of code that we put on your Eventbrite site. It allowed us to remarket to people that visited it, and it allowed us to track the purchases that people ended up making after they interacted with your ad. Basically, Apple now has rolled out an update where if many of you are Apple users, you might see this anytime you download a new application. It asks you, do you want to deny tracking or do you want to accept tracking? And so far, we're seeing around 90% of people, don't quote me on it as I don't know the full sample size, I've only seen a couple reports, but around 90% of people have actually been opting out of this type of tracking. And I mean, honestly, to me, it kind of makes sense. From a psychological standpoint, we normally always pick the first option that shows up on a lot of pop up windows. And with privacy being a little bit more of a hot topic now and people taking it seriously, I think it's kind of inevitable that most people are opting out of this type of track. So, what you might notice is maybe compared to when you ran campaigns a while back and you used this type of tracking and you had, a lot bigger of a return on ad spend, what happens now is if somebody basically makes a purchase and they've opted out of that tracking, you're not going to be able to track that purchase via that pixel as you used to. Now, one of the cool things we have with Boost is something called offline tracking. It basically is a connection with Facebook and Eventbrite that if somebody buys for your Eventbrite event, using the same email that they use on Facebook, we can actually map that purchase back to your campaign. So that's just one cool feature that we have in here to try to help you understand a little bit better of the impact. Just because this industry has been changing, it's not as easy to kind of almost measure that impact as it was before, but we're always trying to be on top of the curve and just have something that'll help give you a little bit better insight. So I just wanted to encourage you and let you know that, if you're not always seeing like an 8x return on ad spend for the campaign that you're running, it could be due to a lot of other factors. It could be due to the fact that maybe your customers have actually opted out of tracking, so a lot of them aren't being tracked. But one thing that's really important is, especially nowadays, pay attention to your sales on the back end as you're running an ad campaign. As it's kind of a little bit more likely nowadays that that purchase might not be tracked 100% fully, but somebody might interact with the ad and then go buy on Eventbrite. So it's always important. Make sure you're looking at your sales on the back end. Is That's what we had to do in the advertising dark ages too, as well. With billboards, we couldn't directly measure or like attribute something to a to a billboard purchase in a lot of cases. But that's pretty much the main stuff that I wanted to talk about. Jen, did I answer your question in terms of the audience and reach and like making adjustments to the campaign, or did you have any other questions on that, or anybody else too? Any other questions that we could talk about today before we jump? Awesome. And sorry, there is a little bit. I haven't been able to figure it out. There is a little bit of a lag on on YouTube in terms of answering the question, so it comes through a little bit later. But Frank, Jennifer, Tiago, anybody else that's still in here that didn't drop a comment as well, thank you very much for taking the time. Awesome. Yeah. Let us know if you have any questions too. One thing, Jen, just one kind of prerequisite for running ads as well is you will need to have something called a Facebook Business Manager account. Basically, if you're kind of unfamiliar with it, you could kind of think about Facebook ad accounts. So, like how you pay for the campaign with, think of that as almost like a credit card. You can think of Business Manager account as a wallet. So it's kind of an account that you can have on Facebook that you can store all the different things that you work with for ads in it. And you have to have that ad account inside of Business Manager account. It was a dumb you could thank the Russians for like hacking and ruining Facebook. But basically what ended up happening was Facebook made this security change that requires you to have it in there. And the reason it's important is that's what allows you to actually remarket to things like your past purchasers and give you a little bit of tracking. Oh, you already have a business account, then you are absolutely golden. Just wanted to mention that is, that is one of the things that I see when people try to get started building campaigns, that if they don't have that, sometimes it can kind of throw them up a little bit. But let us know if you have any questions too, or down the road if you want some recommendations. Well, just hit us up via that help button. I'm always generally in here too as well helping. So I appreciate all of you taking your time. Jennifer, you were the most active one today, so thank you very much for all of your questions, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. As always, we generally do this every Thursday, so you ever need to pop back in or anything like that, or even have suggestions for us on other sessions that we could do to cover things, it's always more than welcome. So once again, everybody, yeah, all the insights can be very, very overwhelming. We definitely try to summarize it a little bit more, but still a lot of numbers to look at. So just always try to look at things on the back end too, as well as, ad metrics don't always show entirely the full picture as well. So once again, y'all, my name has been Sam. Thank you so much for your time. Have a blessed rest of your Thursday and a wonderful weekend as well. We'll be back doing this once again next week. So take care, everybody, and have a great day.